I do see John is here as well.
Right. Okay, good. So we have John and Chris and myself are going to be the quorum today, correct?
That's right.
Okay, good. Well, we have 2 more minutes till 3, so should we wait and be official?
Yeah, let's wait. When are you gonna go skiing?
I've gone once so far, but it
I
was.
remember, I think we bumped into you guys up at Purgatory one time, it seems like.
Yeah, years ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
been
I
a
got
while.
the one day, January 3rd, that because my pass was blacked out through the holiday, and it was super wonderful. So really nice.
Yeah, I hope there's some, we go up there February 2nd through the 6th, and I'm hoping that there'll be a base there, but I'm guessing it's gonna be pretty darn hard packed.
Unless we get some more
Yeah,
moisture. Well, we're getting a little today.
it was
Sprinkles.
spitting a little bit when I was in town.
Yeah, I guess it was raining a little bit in Sedona, which is good. We need moisture, so we'll take that.
I finally gave up on skiing. I had a major crash a few years back and it was like, that's not worth it anymore.
It was a sign. I have really bad insurance for the next few months. And so even last year and this year, it's like, I take a spill, it's going to be expensive. So starting in April, I'll have a little better insurance, and then I'll feel more confident up there that I'm not going to be writing.
I just don't bounce like I used to.
I don't think any of us do.
Yeah, the brain bounces off your skull a lot more these days.
Well, it's mostly my hip.
Yeah, it was my brain. I brought my cracked helmet to the Boy Scout meeting to show them all.
Oh my gosh.
That's smart.
I got brought down the mountain on one of those ride behinds.
I didn't want that, so I just toughed it out, but it was enough to give me a wake-up call.
Mhm. It is. It's a fun sport, but you definitely take your health in your hands when you're up there. So
Don't want to
stick
pull a
with cross
Sonny
country.
Bono.
no, not at all. All right. Well, it's 3:00. So should we get started?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, I will call to order the Coconino County Board of Adjustment. Oops,
I'm
sorry.
not sure what that was.
For I don't even know what day today is, the 18th, January 18th, 2022. And our first order of business will be the approval of minutes from April 20th, 2021.
I looked through those notes of meeting and it looked pretty good for the case, but we actually voted on officers in that meeting, didn't we? And I don't see it noted in there.
Was that in September?
Well, this is April 21st meeting is what I have in my notes here.
I'm
I
looking
got-
where
I-
it says September 21st.
Yeah, September
I'm
21st.
sorry. Excuse me. At the last meeting, we approved the minutes from our previous meeting of April 20th. And yes, our last meeting was September 21st, 2021.
And it's noted there to vote on officers and I think we did. So I would say let's get I would vote to approve it after they add in the notes on the voting for the officers.
That's right. Yeah, I don't see it in there.
And I don't remember us doing it. So there we go. That's September. Yeah, it was quite a bit of time has passed since then. So I will agree, though. Yes, if John, I'm sure that that's correct. So what we have in the minutes looks correct, and then make any changes necessary for adding election of officers. All right.
So I would move to approve it based on adding the notes on the officers.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. So our first case today is case VAR 008. And Zach is our planner today.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Zach Schwartz with Planning and Zoning staff, and I'll be handling this case. Marty, if you could allow me to share my screen on this one, and then also to allow Kelly to share it for next case as we get there.
And Zach, I just realized that again, I think we're a little rusty from not having too many cases, is I did not go over, and since we do have such a large contingent here that are watching, one of the first things I should have done is let you all know that this meeting, how we will conduct business, which is we have a 3-member board, which is our quorum. We have 2 cases today. Staff will present the staff report. Zach will be our first planner, and Kelly will handle the second case for us. And what will happen is Zach will present, and the board will ask questions. We'll see what's going on with that. We, at that point, after staff has finished, we'll ask the applicant if the applicant would like to speak, and the applicants can address us, and we might have some questions for the applicant. Then we'll ask if there's anybody in the audience that wants to talk and have something to say. And if you do, we welcome that. And after staff and the applicant and anybody in the audience has talked, we'll then close the case. And at that point, the board will discuss among themselves the merits of the case. We'll look to make a motion on the case at that point. So just to let you know, we'll do that twice with the 2 cases. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair, for clarifying that for the audience, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen for our first case. This case is VAR 21008. The applicant for the case is Lauren Hall, and she and her husband Nick own the subject property, which is located at 12115 North Peaks Parkway in Fernwood area. The zoning of the subject property is AR, that's agricultural residential, a single family residential zoning district with a 1 acre parcel size minimum. This request is for a variance for a reduction of the animal keeping setback that's required in the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance requires a 55-foot setback for structures where horses or livestock are fed, watered, or sheltered. And the applicant has an existing barn on the property that's 18 feet, 10 inches from the interior side property boundary that they're looking to get a variance approved for. The subject property is 1 acre in size, and it's already developed with the existing residence and barn. Surrounding land uses to the north, south, and west are all developed properties in the same zone. Many of them notably also have accessory animal keeping structures. And to the east of the subject property is the Coconino National Forest. So I have here on the screen for you a vicinity map, and just for bearing, here's Highway 89 here. The subject property is over here, and everything in yellow is in that AR zone as well, the agricultural residential zone. Over to the east here is the green, which is Coconino National Forest. And I have here a zoomed in aerial photo of the subject property. I do want to note for you that the exact location in regard to the property lines, it's not exact here on this aerial photo. This is just more for a reference of generally where things are on the property. So I have the home here on the western side of the property, the animal barn that's the subject of this request here. You can see on this aerial that on the adjacent property to the south, the neighbor actually has a pigsty and coops right there as well. But then I also wanted to show you the applicant submitted site plan. So this is more accurate, where they have the existing barn at the 18.83, which is 18 feet, 10 inches from the southern property boundary here. And that's the subject of this request. For some background on this request, the applicant bought the property in 2019. And the barn was actually built in 2017 by previous property owners. There was a permit received for the barn, and the mix-up was that most accessory structures in this zone are only required an interior side setback of 10 feet from the property line, except that structures where animals are being kept, there's the required 55-foot setback. The submitted plans for the barn were unclear. It looked like it was just for storage, and probably staff, the person who was reviewing for the planning and zoning division, could have looked a little bit more closely or added some additional notes to ensure that this wasn't an animal keeping barn. But in any case, the permit was approved, not realizing that this was for an animal keeping structure at that 18 feet and 10 inches from the property boundary. The applicant actually only realized that the animal keeping setback wasn't met during 2021 when they applied for a conditional use permit from the Planning and Zoning Commission for an equine therapy business, and staff realized the issue that the barn wasn't meeting the 55 feet from the property line, and held the conditional use permit request until the applicant was able to come before the Board of Adjustment and get the variance for the request prior. So the applicant knew that there was a permit for the, so I'm getting some feedback here, but the applicant was aware that there was a permit for the barn. They weren't aware that there was this issue though, where the barn was supposed to be meeting this 55-foot setback. And part of that was a staff problem. I just wanted to show you on the screen, and these were in your packets as well, but the barn is actually shown as just storage. It wasn't clear that this was for animal keeping. And if you really looked on this foundation plan, you could see that that part of basically where we have the bubbled area of the foundation plan, that was to remain dirt. If the planning and zoning representative had looked a little bit closer and realized that, that might have been some sort of indication that this was an animal keeping barn. And in that case, then the planning review, the person doing the planning review should have talked to the applicant and either gotten the variance first or had them move the location of the proposed barn, but that didn't happen for this case. I also wanted to show you, and this was in your packet, that these photos were taken from Zillow. This is what the applicants actually, they saw in the advertisement that the person selling the property clearly had these as a barn for keeping animals. As far as public participation, the neighboring property owners within 300 feet of the subject property were notified of the request, and there were no responses. The Board of Adjustment is aware by now that you all have to make one of findings A, B, or C, and you have to make both findings D and E in order to approve the case. And I just wanted to go through these findings with you and the way that staff makes them as a guideline. So the first finding is that the variance is necessary for the preservation of substantial property rights, and that strict or literal interpretation of the enforcement of the specified regulation would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary physical hardship inconsistent with the objectives of the zoning ordinance. Staff is able to make that finding, and staff's response is that the existing barn was built on a concrete slab and it would be a hardship to move it, given that it was permitted by the county at closer than 55 feet from the property line as submitted for permit review by a previous owner. Finding B is that there are pre-existing exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the land or buildings that were not created or self-imposed by the applicant and that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zone. Staff is able to make that finding. Staff's response is that the county would not typically permit an animal keeping barn closer than 55 feet from the property line without a variance being issued first. The barn was placed at 18 feet, 10 inches from the property line by a previous property owner, so it's not a hardship that was self-imposed. And just because the board only has to make one of the first three and then both of the last two, D and E, I'll go ahead and skip down to finding D that staff is able to make. The finding is that the granting of the variance as conditioned is the minimum that will accomplish this purpose and will not constitute the granting of a special privilege inconsistent with the limitation on other properties in the same zone. And staff is able to make that finding. Staff's response is that the granting of the variance would be the minimum needed to accomplish the purpose. It's already been placed. Finding E is that the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. And staff is able to make that finding. The granting of the variance would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. It has existed without issue since 2017, and it is near a property line where the adjacent neighbor has a pigsty and chicken coops. So with that, if the board is able to make the required findings of fact, staff recommends approval of VAR 21008, subject to the one condition of the staff report. And I'm happy to take any questions from the board at this time.
Yeah, this is Chris. Zach, I just had when you were mentioning the person or the people trying to apply for a conditional use permit, you mentioned it was in 2021, but in the written narrative on page 404, it says it was in 2020. I just wondered if that was a typo or what that might be.
Mr. Wani, thank you. I'm not sure if the applicant first came to the county and started. There's a long process of things that need to happen prior to applying for the CUP. So first you have to go out to the neighbors. Unlike with the variance where the staff just goes out to the neighbors for the citizen participation, the conditional use permit, the applicant has to create that meeting themselves and they have to do a report on it. They have to have a number of site plans and narratives. So it's possible that the applicant was working on those things in 2020 and then applied in 2021. I'm not quite sure, but that's something that possibly when the applicant's up to speak, you could ask them of that as well. But from my memory, the applicant had applied for the conditional use permit in 2021.
Okay. And then just a point of reference, as I scroll down, the last page of this report says it's page 5 of 4. It probably ought to say the number of pages should probably be adjusted all the way down. 1 of 5.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wani. I think they're actually, yeah, the attachments actually go on to a 6th page. And I think that was just from a copy and pasting error, the number of pages that were maximum there. So I appreciate that. We'll make sure that we fix that for the record and for cases moving forward.
Okay, that's the only 2 things that I was curious about.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet.
Zach, this is John. I noticed on the drawing, the site plan, the hand-drawn site plan from the original construction of the barn, it references, as you pointed out, the barn is being for storage. And then in the permit, it says it's a garage/workshop. And so that's why I think there was a reference to the site inspector saying that it was okay, that it was closer than the 32 noted on this hand-drawn site plan, since it was under 20 feet, but it was really okay because it was not, the rule was a 10-foot setback, assuming, that they weren't going to put animals in it. So I don't see anywhere on here where there was any suggestion that it was for animals. It was just for storage. And so I don't see that there's any kind of issues with misunderstandings back then.
Right. Mr. McCartney, what I can say is that you're right on the permit itself. I don't see anything about animal keeping on it, except for if you really were pretty clued in. And I think that a lot of our staff does have a decent amount of training where they recognize if there's a dirt floor on the foundation plan, that's something that indicates possibly it could be used as. It used to be a common practice for any accessory structure that we would have a stamp that showed the animal keeping requirements on it. But yeah, I think you're right that there wasn't necessarily anything really that indicative of the animal keeping, other than I would say a portion of the floor being bare there. And
So
then
where does
probably
it
the
say,
inspector.
where does it say that the floor is bare on that foundation plan?
So I think attached to the staff report, you have this full foundation plan, and the bubbled out portion is labeled as, there's a label on the side that references the bubbled out portion, and that's where it says bare earth floor. But I guess at the end of the day, I think it's both of an issue with the original applicant for the building permit, which is not the halls, that they didn't communicate that this was for animal keeping. And I don't think a lot of people would think right off the bat that there might be different setbacks for an animal keeping structure and for a normal shed or garage. So I think that staff could have had a little bit more conversation with the applicant at the time as well on that.
This
Yeah,
is,
obviously, on that lot, you can put a structure that has a 55-foot setback from the side property lines. The lot's not wide enough.
It would be
Yeah.
tough for sure.
Yeah, it's 149. So if you took the 55 on each side off, you could get a 39-foot structure, wide structure.
just fit.
Yeah, so you could, I mean, I did the math because that was, I wanted to find out if it was potentially even possible. I can see that the septic is behind the house. So if you were going to do that, you'd have to put it very at the rear of the lot.
Yeah,
The-
also-
it-
They also,
this-
they also kind of blew it when they put it 18 feet instead of 32 feet from the property line. And I'm sure that probably had something to do with the septic, but again, that has nothing to do with the current owners. That's not their issue.
It seems like something's off with the scale. I mean, you look at that overhead shot, and the building looks a lot bigger on the lot than it would if the lot was 150 feet wide. Seemed to me, anyway.
I have a question for Zach. So Zach, when did this, and this is just more curiosity, do you know when this 55-foot side setback for animal keeping was put in? I always recalled that there used to be 100-foot from a residential structure, but I actually wasn't familiar with the 55-foot.
Madam Chair, yes, thanks for bringing that up, and maybe I should have discussed that in the staff report as well. So prior to 2016, it was 100 feet from a neighboring home, whether that be the main home or accessory dwelling unit. After 2016, that's when the 55-foot requirement that was changed, because where people put a home, if somebody put a barn and then somebody created a home, that would you can understand where that could that requirement is not as easily controllable as a property line requirement, I guess. And so that's another kind of complication for the whole thing.
Correct. Yes, and I know my neighbor there was a big case and big problem with the 100-foot setback. And so it was hard. It created hardship. So this is better, but I think it was one of, I would have to say, I think it's one of those zoning conditions that is not widely known. And I would say so, and this is my being on the end of looking at it as the real from the real estate when they listed it. This is and they didn't that it didn't come up. I can see where it didn't come up because I would say that probably most people have no idea there's a 55-foot setback. So I will. That's the only comment I have. Is there any other comments of staff by the board? Any other questions from Chris or
here.
John?
No,
Okay, good. And Zach, no input from any neighbors. So everybody was not, I mean, and in a 1 acre subdivision, you know, there are quite a few neighbors within.
That's right.
Okay, and so the applicant, Lauren, if you're the applicant, is there anything that you would like to add to what has been presented?
No, I think Zach did a really nice job covering everything, and I just wanted to thank him and thank you guys for hearing us out.
Great. Very good. So after the variance case, then your conditional use permit will be then heard at that time? Or has it been tabled as they're waiting for this?
Yes, so we had it put on hold while we were waiting for the variance decision. And hopefully, I think Zach has the date that we're returning back to it dependent on this decision.
Okay.
End of February.
Thank you.
John or Chris, do you have any other comments of the app or questions for the applicant?
No, I think it's very thorough.
Okay.
no, I don't. Thanks.
All right, thanks. So at this point, I'll see if there's anybody that is on the Zoom that would like to comment on this case. And I am a little rusty on this, Lauren. I'm supposed to ask you when you speak if you will give us your name and mailing address, please.
Yes, my name is Lauren Hall. My address is 12115 North Peaks Parkway.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Okay, so if there is not anybody else that wants to speak on this, I will close the meeting for public comments, and we'll go ahead and discuss the merits of the case and look for a motion.
I think it's pretty clear cut. The current owners had no way of knowing that this was going to be an issue. It was obviously a livestock barn. As far as they were concerned, it was advertised that way in pictures. They bought it knowing that they would be able to use it for that purpose. And I think it's pretty easy to go along with.
Right. And you can see how the inspector that, you know, that it really, if you look back at the permit, which it's nice to have, is there was really, I don't see any indication other than metal storage building that it was, and I could see why they permitted it the way they did, because there definitely, there were not a lot of red flags that it was going to be used as a barn. And I agree, you know, this was not self-imposed, and so I can make the findings of fact.
Yes, I agree. I can make A, B, D, and E.
Yeah, I have a hard time with it because it just feels like the original permit wasn't forthcoming with their intent on it. But that's not the current owner's issue. But I'm unhappy about that. And so my only hang up is making E, you know, how it affects the neighbors, because having a barn 20 feet away, 18 or 11 or what is it, about 19 feet away, that's pretty close to the property line, and now, they probably, I guess, had horses in it before, and now it's gonna be used harder, I guess, have more animals in there. And so I think it's going to impact the neighbors, I guess, to the south more. But they didn't comment, send in any notes. Sounds like they didn't want to have any input in on it, so maybe they don't care that it's going to be a different use now. So I guess I'm not happy about it, but I can go along with it. Just based on that there was no complaints from the south side.
Right. And that's how I felt too. The fact that not just the south side, but nobody in the vicinity had, I'd love to see letters of support for it rather than no comment. That always makes me feel better if I can actually, have the neighbors. But I'm going to go that the no comment means that they're all right with it. And one of the things, I guess, it might be going to be used harder, but also if it's going to have a conditional use permit, potentially it's going to have some degree, the applicant will have to comply with what's in the conditional use permit. And normally, I think a lot of times when you see people with horses like this that are being used, they're actually, those are some barns that are really well kept. And rather than just a neighborhood facility with this, I'm hoping to see that they'll be taking care of the animals and the conditions in such a way that it will be very well done.
Okay, well, Chris, you want to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we accept the variance request with the conditions as stated.
And that's for variant VAR-21-008.
Right, I should have said that. Thank you.
Well,
Oh, I'll second that, sorry.
I'll second it, but I was waiting for John.
Left me hanging.
All right, so we have a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we have a unanimous approval of the case. So thank you all for your time, and I'm sure staff will be getting with you. And okay, then.
Appreciate it.
All right, we good? All right, so I'll move on to our next case. Except I keep losing my packet here, excuse me. Our next case is case number
VAR-21-009.
9. Yes, there it is. And Kelly is going to be our planner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone see my screen okay before I get started?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so our applicant is Matthew Peace, and the location is 7175 Naval Observatory Road. This is right along I-40 West, where it meets up with Route 66. I'll show you a map in just a moment. Zoning is R5, so there's a 5-acre minimum lot size. And the request is for a 1.66 acre parcel to become buildable. And I'll give you a little more context here. This was originally Tract B of the West Peak subdivision. So this parcel was separated from the rest of the subdivision by Naval Observatory Road. And they're hoping that they can make it a buildable lot. The surrounding land uses are all developed for residences. It's all the same zone, RR5. Here you can see a map just to get your bearings. Here's the I-40. If you can see my cursor moving back and forth. And then going perpendicular to it is Route 66. Our parcel is just to the north of that, off of Naval Observatory Road. Here you can see a little bit better what I mean when I say this was separated from the rest of the subdivision. When the subdivision was created, Naval Observatory Road already existed, and this little piece right here was not connected to any other land that they were subdividing. And essentially, that just means that it would have been very difficult to use, and it would deprive them of substantial property rights if they were to try to connect it to another parcel. I think we can all recognize how it'd be difficult to use that piece of parcel if it was connected to another lot on the other side of the road. Here's some photos from Naval Observatory Road. This is looking directly west. You can see kind of in the background, there's Route 66. And this is just the beginnings of the on-ramp onto the I-40. And here's what the applicant is proposing. Right here, the square is going to be the home. You can see the driveway goes out all the way to the furthest corner from this intersection at Naval Observatory and Route 66. They also have their septic outlined right here. And when the subdivision was created in 1993, they wrote into the conditions. I'll read it out loud for everybody. All development of lots 1 through 12 and tracts A and B shall be in conformance with section 9 of the zoning ordinance for RR zones. A variance will be necessary prior to the development of these tracts. So our general analysis is that currently no permits can be given for this parcel. If they want to build, they need a variance in order to do that. And there was no use specified for this tract on the plat. I went through all of the documentation for this parcel when it was created, and I did not see anything that was relating to a specified use. And typically that would be outlined directly on the plat, easily visible. And the parcel size obviously was not self-imposed. This was just recently bought. And the conditions state that the parcel can be developed with the variance. So citizen participation, we did receive 2 opposing viewpoints. We received that last night. I just looked at it today. Apologies for the noise in the background if you can hear that. I can summarize it for you here since you didn't have time to review it. We didn't share it with you. I can put it up on my screen, but I'll just summarize it quickly here. Some of the comments were pertaining to that this area was designated for open space, that it would set a precedent for other parcels to be subdivided into smaller lots, that past development requests were denied, water availability, and the fact that the applicant knew it was non-conforming when they bought it. Staff wanted to give these concerns a response. So you can see here, staff response is in red. The tract was not designated for any use on the plat. So if it was intended for open space, it wasn't designated officially through the county. And because this parcel is already existing, it was not created in recent history by Matthew Peace. This granting of the variance would not allow for anyone else to split their parcels smaller. They would need something like a zone change, which we know would be relatively unlikely. And all of the findings would need to be made for that. So this is not opening the doors for any future variances or lot splits in this area. Water availability is actually something we're not allowed to consider. This is something that is reserved by the state. So if there are any concerns with that, they should go to the Department of Water Resources. And although the applicant knew it was non-conforming, which they can speak to if they would like at another time, they did not create the parcel, so it was not self-imposed in the eyes of staff. So to summarize, staff can make all of the findings here. I'll read you very quickly the findings that we've made. For finding A, we suggest that without a variance, the owner would be deprived of substantial property rights. Strict and literal interpretation of the minimum parcel size would result in hardship to the applicant. For finding B, the size of the subject property is uncommon and not self-imposed. This lot was physically separated from the rest of the subdivision by Naval Observatory Road at the time that was created. For finding D, staff suggests that the granting of this variance is the minimum needed, and it would not constitute a special privilege. And for the last finding, finding E, it would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare. All right, and staff would like to propose one amendment to the conditions. You can see here, it should say any further reduction to lot size instead of reduction in setbacks. So I just suggest that when you approve it with that change. But overall, staff recommends that if the board can make the findings, we recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. I have a couple questions, and they're actually kind of what we, sometimes it's when we read these, other questions come to mind, and they may not bear so much, but it's nice to know the history. So it talks that this property was rezoned in 93. Do you know what the original zoning was that it was rezoned from?
Yeah, my understanding is that this was open space that was rezoned to RR5.
Okay, so it was so it was G zoning, or it was actually open space zoning? I didn't realize we had open space zoning.
We do, yes, excuse me. We do have an open space zoning, OS, and that is for sometimes parks and trails, but it's mostly intended to just be open. That's often done in subdivisions where residential development is separated from open space. That's intended to stay that way.
So the rezoning was from open space. And then I had tried to look on the map. It talks at that, when it talks about that on the plat that was approved, that parcels A and B could, where is parcel A and what is its status? Do you know, has it ever been developed, or do you know where it is on the map?
Yeah, I can show it to you on the map. I do not know its current status. I know at the time that they had wanted the county to adopt it. I can look up the ownership right now and let you know. Okay, so tract A, if you can see my cursor, is right here. There's a little bump in the road here, and tract A is directly underneath it.
So it's another small piece of property that's on the other side of the road.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll try to get a better view of that.
It is very small, my apologies.
I'm using this other little app that I have. Oh, I see. So actually, it's on the, I see it. Okay. So it's kind of over by the Public Works, it looks like.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, and yeah, so I'm gonna see if if Chris or John have any other questions of Kelly.
Yeah, I'm curious, you mentioned that it previously was zoned for open space. Is that whole RR5 section, everything north of
No.
66?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wani. So it is this whole section north of 66 that's zoned RR5. I am outlining it with my cursor, if you can see that.
And then that was rezoned in 93, I understand,
Yes, correct.
to RR5.
Yep.
So that little triangular piece, the subject property is part of that same rezoning,
It is.
but it's just that oddball piece because it ends up being cut off by the Naval Observatory Road.
Viewing.
Exactly.
Okay. So in the complaint part of it, where somebody complained, they're incorrect about it being open space. Maybe it was 20 whatever years ago, but it hasn't been for quite some time.
So when the tracks were designated, if they were set aside for a specific use with the county, in our records and directly on the plat, it would say what it's set aside for.
Okay.
The comments seem to imply that when it was donated to the guidance center, that the guidance center was supposed to hold it in trust for a specific use, but that's not something that the county can make decisions based off of, and we have no record of that.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions or comments or.
So Kelly, you said you received two, were they emails or phone calls, or you received input from two neighbors, and potentially maybe they're here today and would like to speak, but what communication did you receive?
We received two emails. One was at 7:44 last night. Let me double check that. And the other one was at 9:09 p.m. last night.
Okay. And could I just ask if the two people that wrote, if you are in the audience, could and would like to address us with those concerns, could you please let me know if you're on the Zoom? If not, I'm going to ask Kelly to read those to us.
We're
Hi there.
here.
Hi there. My name is Steve Philpott, and I was one of the ones that sent in the email, and I'd be happy to read the letter I sent last night.
Okay, great. I'll have you do that. And the second party, are you here?
We're here. We don't know how to connect.
Well, we can hear you, which is great.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's fine. If all we have is for you to, if you want to speak, then I won't have Kelly read the emails, and we'll just go to each of you for your comments. And so when we're done with Kelly's portion, we're going to first talk to the app. We're going to have some questions for the applicant, if the applicant is here. And after that, we'll come in and get your comments. And again, as I said, when we do have you talk, we'll ask you to state your name and your mailing address when you do. Okay, so at this point, if there's no other questions for Kelly, I'll look to see if the applicant would like to address the board.
Yes, hello, this is Matt Peace, 6086 East Barney Drive. And I am the applicant on the property here. Appreciate everybody's time. Kelly, thank you for the presentation. I don't think I have anything further to add other than, we're just looking to build one single home, similar to all the other neighbors that have built out there. Nothing out of the ordinary or character for the area.
Okay. And you are aware when you bought this that it was not going to be developable without the variance. And
I found out about a day or two before close with a conversation that I had with Zach relating to something on the property. And he had told me that, it did specify that there was an option in the plat to go through the variance process. I didn't want to back out of the contract at that point with how far we've already gotten into it. So we did go ahead and close it back in December, I believe it was.
Sean, or do you have any questions? Or Chris?
John doesn't.
Applicant?
Yeah, this is Chris. I do have one question. When you bought it, so when you actually bought it, you did not know that you would have to have a variance in order to build on it?
No, when I closed on the property, I was aware a few days prior to the closing of the necessity for that. When I put the property under contract, I was unaware of that. I didn't learn it until later in the process. But when I did, when I actually closed it and purchased it, I was aware of it prior to the close.
Right, but you were already that far into it.
That's correct.
And are you a developer? Is this something that is one of many that you're building or whatever, or is this your own residence? Just
No,
your-
I am a developer and I do build, and this will be, you know, a house that will be built and eventually sold.
Okay, thank you.
I did go back in and look at the comments on the listing when it was in for sale, and it definitely said that the applicant needed to speak with Coconino County about development, that it was under, you know, not a conforming size. So I would say that, you know, definitely, you know, it's, you know, we assume, and it's that it's been bought for speculation purposes too. And that's how it is. So any other questions of the applicant?
No, thanks.
No,
No, okay. All right, then at this point, then I am is that then Matt, is there anything else you want to add, or are you satisfied with the presentation that you have seen?
No, I think I'm good right now. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. And after you know, we could come back to you with questions. So we'll before we close, if we get any other information that we want clarification on. So at this
Absolutely, I'm
point-
happy to answer that.
Great. So at this point, I'm going to go to Steve Philpott. And Steve, if you could state your legal name for the record and your mailing address. And then if you want to read us what you sent in the email, we would appreciate it.
Okay, yeah, my name is Steve Philpott. I live at 7150 West Naval Observatory Road. It's the property directly north of the subject property we're talking about today. Couple of things I just wanted to clarify for everyone is parcel A, that's actually our well site. So we just have like a co-op, and that's what parcel A is being used for right now. And so that's about 2 miles west of the public works yard, not directly by the public works yard. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. At the beginning of the bulletin of the slideshow, it looked like it was calling out this property as being 1.66 acres. It's actually just 1.07. So it's not as big as what the bulletin, the PowerPoint shows. Another comment I wanted to make is the developer here has already started some dirt work. Last week they're out there digging some holes, and you can't access this property directly, so they had to cut across the Forest Service land to get there, to get to that. So I measured it, just kind of a quick measurement with my vehicle, and they drove about 0.3 of a mile over the Forest Service land to get to this piece of property to dig those holes. And so now I'll just read you my letter. So essentially, we are opposed to the zoning variance request of the case. My wife and I live at 7150 West Naval Observatory Road, Flagstaff, Arizona. Our property is adjacent to this 1.0 acre parcel. This parcel is known as APN 1166014. The property was recently purchased from the Guidance Center on 12-3 of 2021 by Matthew Peace. Peace is the owner of AXXO Holdings and LLC. The piece of land he purchased is zoned for RR5, rural residential, calling out for a 5-acre minimum. The zone is intended to designate areas of the county for low-density residential use on minimum lot sizes of 5 acres. Peace was advised prior to the purchase that we would oppose any request for zoning change. My wife had a conversation with him across the road prior to him purchasing that. Peace knowingly took a gamble, banking on the fact that Coconino County Board of Adjustments would approve his zoning variance request. Peace is an experienced and professional real estate developer. So with him buying this non-conforming property, it would not be viewed as a hardship. Granting the zoning request will be viewed as providing Peace with special privileges. We are one of the original partners of the West Peak subdivision. This piece of property did not conform with the minimum size requirements of the established zoning for the subdivision. It is listed on the map as Tract B and was intended to be green space and to act as a sound barrier from traffic on I-40. It was decided back in 1993 that our managing partner, that this parcel would be donated to a nonprofit entity so it could be held in trust and forever preserved as green space. The Guidance Center was chosen as the entity to hold the property. In 2002, attempts were made by others to modify the zoning of this piece of property. At that time, Coconino County denied the request. You could look up PZ-CUP-02-051 and for details. And so at the time, Coconino County did deny that request, and we'd ask that once again, the request is denied. The Coconino County zoning ordinance was established to conserve and promote the public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare of the present and future citizens of Coconino County. The intent of the zoning ordinance is to safeguard and enhance the appearance, function, and quality of both the new and existing developments of Coconino County. The second intent of the county zoning ordinance is to promote a comprehensive, orderly, and efficient use of land resources and ensure compatibility and safety between land uses. Any approval of this variance request would be contrary to the intent of RR5 rural residential 5-acre minimum parcels, zoning of the Coconino County residential properties. We urge this board to deny the variance request by Peace in order to preserve the general intent and preserve and purpose of the established zoning ordinance. Respectfully submitted, Stephen and Michelle Philpott.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions for Mr. Philpott?
I don't have any.
Okay, thank you.
No, I don't have any either.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Philpott. And we have one other person that would like to speak. Again, if you could state your name and address. And I think maybe we lost that.
Hello, we're
There
here.
you are. There you are. Great. So if you could give us your name and address and then let us know what your comments are.
Yes, this is Barbara Harton and my husband David Harton. We're both here. We're at 6800 West Bell Springs Road. We're within the West Peak subdivision. Wanted to make a couple of comments before we read the email that we sent in. It seemed like according to the criteria that you must satisfy to pass a variance, that the issue cannot be self-imposed. And it seems to us that since the developer knew that this property would require a variance, that this difficulty is self-imposed. And again, as Steve mentioned, the size of the property is misstated. Let me read our email that we sent to the Board of Adjustment. These are comments for the meeting on variance request VAR 21009 to be held on January 18th, 2022 at 3 p.m. We are residents of the West Peak subdivision at 6800 West Bell Springs Way. We understand the applicant is seeking a variance to develop a property known as Tract B in our subdivision. We are opposed to any variance allowing building on this property. This property was donated to the Guidance Center with the intention that it remain green space. It should be maintained as green space. All lots in West Peak were created maintaining a 5-acre minimum, allowing for proper drainage of septic fields and very rocky ground. Additionally, West Peak residents share a well, and this property is not part of that agreement. Finally, allowing development on a 1-acre parcel would create a precedent for dividing of other surrounding adjacent properties, and I mean outside of the West Peak subdivision, into smaller parcels, thus creating more demand on the local aquifer and depleting our established well, and also creating more septic drainage than allowed in the original planning for the area, possibly contaminating the water supply. And we are unalterably opposed to this variance. Again, the property should be maintained as green space as was originally intended. David and Barbara Harton.
Thank you very much, David and Barbara. I appreciate your comments and appreciate you being on the meeting today. Okay. At this time, do we have John or Chris, do you have any questions of the Hartons?
John does not.
Chris does not.
Okay, very good. And is there anybody else that is on this that would like to speak on this case? If you
Yes. Yes, my name is Sean Freight. I live at 6400 West Saskin Ranch Circle here in Flagstaff. So I actually live on the opposite side of Route 66 in one of the lots, kind of in that oval shaped area. So just a point of reference, I oppose this variance to the change of use or change of zoning for the property. Obviously, there's been a lot of development attention to this West Route 66 corridor over the last several years. The property to the north of West Peak, the property to the east of Saskin Ranch, where I live, there's developers, trying to figure out, hey, how do we, change use? How do we develop properties in the area that are different than, the current zoning? Rural Residential 5 is where I live. It's obviously what West Peak is zoned for also. So when we talk about setting a precedence, although it may not be allowed for other lots in the current zoning, you are allowing smaller lots in this area of development that really has, larger acreage. So property to the north, property to the east, could see that as a development opportunity. In looking at the county website, AXXO Holdings owns, 40 properties in Coconino County. So, the applicant is a developer, somebody who is well-versed in, what they can and can't do. So whether he found out 2 days before closing or after, he had an opportunity to, decide not to close on the property. And so, we're asking for, your support to deny the variance.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Any questions of Mr. Freight?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Okay, if there's nobody else in the public, then at this point, I am going to close the public portion of the meeting, and we'll have the board discuss the case. Okay, I'm just reading the comments from. All right, okay, very good. All right, so I didn't read them earlier. All right, so at this point, I'll talk with John and Chris. One thing I would like to do is, as you guys, I am a real estate agent. I have access to our MLS. I just like to read you the comments that were in the multiple listing when, which I'm sure the applicant viewed, which is, it says it's an amazing opportunity, over an acre of land with ponderosa pines bordering national forest. This lot is zoned RR5 with many other possible uses under a conditional use permit. Please contact Coconino County Planning and Zoning for potential uses. And then it also puts a note out to, in what's called the private remarks, which real estate agents only can see. It says, please contact Zach Schwartz, Coconino County Senior Planner, with his phone number and email address for all use questions. So just want, I like to, if possible, if we have the information, it's nice to be able to go in and see, what was seen and, what was disclosed. And so just in the comments there, it definitely was disclosed that this was 5-acre zoning. And the applicant has bought it as a, potential to be developed under the variance, which under number 16, it did leave that door open when the property was rezoned. And I was actually really surprised that kind of the terminology got through staff, P&Z, and Board of Supervisors. That you would have thought for sure that this would have this small parcel would have been ear tagged as open space. So it's on here that that a variance will be necessary. It's up to us whether we can find the findings of facts to grant variance. So that's my input at this point. So I'd like to hear what John and Chris's thoughts are.
In reading the findings of fact, I'm having a hard time making any of them. But what are you seeing? I mean, it sounds like it's going to be material injurious. It's, there's special privileges. There are no self-imposed. Well, if you're going to buy it hoping to get a variance, it seems like you're supposing that you can make a change. And I think that's self-imposed. Staff said that wasn't. I can't make B. I have a hard time making any of them.
Yeah, I feel, that it should have been a little clearer in the when they rezoned the use for this, but I definitely remember this property being developed, and this whole area is 5 acres, and the intent of the people that live in Skaskan Ranch and West Peak is to, have this kind of urban interface with these larger 5-acre parcels versus smaller 1 acre parcels. So Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of torn, actually. I do agree that it sounds like, or appears that Mr. Peace certainly could have done more research maybe, or have a clearer conversation, whatever it would take to know ahead of time that a variance would have to be supplied for this. I agree that it can't be built on as is. And I don't know when it comes to self-imposed, I don't know, I'm really kind of struggling with all 5, like John said. The circumstances, being the newer member of this board, I'm not sure how much you take into consideration circumstances over the letter of the rule. I'm not sure. I mean, staff went through and found 4 of these, and I'm sure they're following letter of the rule. And by letter of the rule, it does seem like we would be violating the purpose of our board to grant it. But at the same time, I don't know, I'm really kind of torn. I'm struggling with this one.
Yeah, no, I understand. And one of the things the applicant, when we hear from some of the neighbors and such is don't set a precedent, don't set a precedent. And one of the things I want to be clear is that the Board of Adjustment, a variance is very much specific to each case. We are not broad in changing anything. So that's why we have to find the findings of fact for each individual case. And when I did read the county's interpretation of finding and facts, I felt that, the owner on you'd be deprived of property rights. However, again, I feel that everybody else has 5 acres. And so your property rights are not as strong as because you don't meet the underlying zoning. And it is self-imposed and uncommon. However, in 1993, when the developer should have gone for a variance at that time and not said open to variance. They specifically knew the property did not meet the zoning, and they at that point should have come in, and if they didn't get the variance, I think at that point they should have designated an open space. So I think that was a little that wasn't really well taken care of by either the developer or the P&Z or staff at that time. Again, the privilege is for everybody to be on a 5-acre parcel. So I can't make C because a single family home is a privilege, but it's not a privilege for a 1-acre parcel in a 5-acre zoning. And I feel that the applicant, I would have not closed on this property until I got a variance. I feel that they very much, bought it for speculation. That's a risk that you take when you are a developer. Some things work out for you and some things don't, but for them to go ahead and purchase this property without a variance, I think was very short-sighted. And I don't feel that it is our, that it's up to us to make that right for them. In fact, I feel pretty much that I don't want to support that speculation. I can't find D. It's, I do feel it would very much be a special privilege. So D is definitely one I can't make.
And having said that, D would be would be one of the two that has to pass in order for this to go.
Correct. And that's the one I feel the strongest on, that it's a
Right.
special privilege.
Yeah, that and the self-imposed. As John said, I feel that's,
Mhm.
I mean, timing wise or not, the variance was part of the deal. And like you say, to close on it without the variance was a risk. And that risk was assumed by the developer. And it's not something that could not have been avoided. It could have been avoided. And that goes back to the special privilege part of it. So yeah, I don't see that I can really support any of them.
Okay, this is John. I would move to deny case VAR -21-009.
Second,
Is there any comments that I can make? I was hoping to have an opportunity to jump back in because there was a couple of things that I think were a misunderstanding.
No, I had closed the public portion after the last applicant spoke.
Okay, I apologize. I thought that was just for the public and not for the applicant, so that was a misunderstanding on my part. But I did have a couple things that were unfortunately misrepresented. I was just hoping I could have the opportunity to clarify, if you guys would allow that.
Actually, we have to follow strict rules, and we normally do not allow at this time, but since that was a miscommunication, I will go ahead and if you specifically want to address what you felt was misrepresented.
Okay, I really appreciate that, and I apologize about the inconvenience. I had heard Steve mention a conversation with his wife and myself, and that I haven't spoken with a single neighbor out there ever. So they may have misunderstood that for somebody else. We did read all the MLS wording, obviously, when we purchased the property. I've purchased multiple properties out in Kachina Village that were on 1 acre parcels. As far as the zoning is concerned, the parcels were only 1/4 of an acre. So I didn't think twice about it until the conversation that I had with Zach. And then as far as the water in the neighborhood, we had no intentions of trying to pull in any water from the neighborhood. We were going to use a cistern system out there. I didn't, with the properties we purchased in Kachina, that's why I didn't think twice about it, because I've done it before on 3 parcels that I can think of out there, and there was 0 issues with just building them. So the conversation
that you've done variances on?
No, we didn't have to do any variances on those ones.
Right,
But they were in.
They were grandfathered substandard sites.
Exactly. So when I originally contracted this, that's what I had expected kind of this process to be. When I had the conversation with Zach and found out about the variance, we did talk to the guidance center or the realtor on the other side to try to push it back and extend it, and they refused to do anything. We already passed any inspection periods at that point, and so we went ahead and closed it at that point. I wasn't trying to assume that this was going to go well. Just with the track record that I've had in the past of buying these parcels that are in kind of non-conforming zonings, it's never been an issue in the past that required a variance.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And water, we don't look at,
Sure.
and we don't go by here. And one of the things, and just to let you know, is we don't go by hearsay of a neighbor said this or a neighbor said that. We don't, that's, again, it's all has to be more finding of fact rather. And it's nice that everyone does get to have their opinion, but those are not things that we give weight to. So
Understand.
to let you know. So, but basically, yeah, variance is a real big, that's kind of, I know you weren't, it sounds like you weren't, hadn't dealt with it before, but truly, there's not a lot of, to get a variance, you have to meet certain criteria, and it's, so it's definitely, something that takes, as I say, findings of facts. And so thank you for your information. I'm going to now close the portion. I'm glad you were able to clarify that for us, though. Thank you. So we're going to go back to where we did have a motion, that a motion had been made and a motion has been seconded. Is there anything that would make you want to withdraw your motion or your second?
No,
No,
No. Okay. So based on that, I'm going to go ahead for a vote. And anyone in favor of denying this case, please vote.
I'm in favor of denying.
Chris and myself. So it is unanimous that we have a denial on case VAR 21009. And at this time, I would like to close the meeting. I need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. Hey, as long as we have all three of you here, it is looking like there might be somebody who will want to have a variance scheduled for February 15th, looks like our next date. We need all three of you for a quorum. So I think Marty will go ahead and email you on that, and just so you can look through your calendars and get back to us. But just FYI, I think we do have a case that wants to get lined up for that date if you're available. So we'll send that email to you.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I should be
Thanks.
available.
Yeah.
I should be available too.
Yeah, I don't
Perfect.
see any conflict at this point. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so
Long-
much.
As long as we make it back from skiing with all the parts still together.
Still in one piece.
Yes, we don't want to have to do this from the Northern Arizona Healthcare.
Oh yeah, I'll be just back from Durango actually. So keep your fingers
Really?
crossed for me, because last year I broke my leg.
Oh my goodness.
We don't want that. No, no.
Yeah.
Have we lost a member at this point?
Sorry, what's that?
Have we lost a member of this board at this point?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I meant to update you all on that. I think Diane was included on the emails, but Craig Burchell, who was a longtime representative of District 2, has dropped out. And so as far as I've been a member of staff here, about 10 years, we haven't had anybody in District 5, and it's mostly reservation, that district. So I am looking to fill District 2. Otherwise, the three of you are a quorum, and we need all three of you to make a unanimous vote for it to work. So that's a challenging place to be. That's where we were before you came on, Chris. So we really appreciate you. But we'll be looking in District 2. And I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able to find somebody. It's been kind of rough, but it's been the holidays that I've been looking. So
Is Craig
I
okay?
didn't realize that. If we had a 2-to-1 vote on that last case, what would have happened?
So even if you had a vote to approve, 2-to-1 wouldn't have been the amount needed to make that pass. Thus, it would have been a de facto denial.
Oh,
Is Craig
Interesting.
okay?
I think he's okay. I think he said he wasn't able to take on, he didn't have the time anymore. Marty, do you recall what he said? I think he was busy with some other projects.
Yeah, he just said he was too busy with other things to continue.
Okay.
Good. Well, we'll keep our ears open for, and I do realize, so 2 is east and part of rural east, correct?
I think so. And I'll send a map to you all, and I'll be looking at some other of the sorts of groups that we have in the county. Maybe I can pluck somebody from our other sort of advisory groups to help us with that. But I'll send you a map in the meantime of where the districts are. We need someone from 2 and one from 5. So if you know anyone who lives in those districts, you'll be able to, maybe you can give us a tip on somebody.
it might be easier for 5 if we stayed with this Zoom instead of going back to in person.
You know, and that's a good point too. The last time that we changed your guys' bylaws, we had some rules about that we could go to digital, but you all, I think everybody agreed that it was better to have them in person for as much as you can. So I think we limited that amount. We've obviously now departed from that because we've only been able to do that. But maybe that's something where we can look at revising those bylaws to keep it a little bit more open. And then I think you're right, John, that looking to District 5 digitally, as long as they're in a place that gets some service, might be a little bit easier to get someone from District 5.
Mhm. I think we could amend bylaws. I think the whole world has had to make some changes. So,
Right.
yeah, so I think if it'd been, I think they had to do X amount in person before they
Yes.
could, and only a certain amount. But that was prior to COVID and a lot of changes. And I think, you know, we've all found that this can be a very successful format. So.
I think so. So I'll try to bring forward for your next meeting, the next meeting that you have a case. So I'm assuming that's going to be February here, but we'll let you know for sure. Then I'll also put an agenda item on there for bylaw changes and amend that so it doesn't cap the amount that you can be digital.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah,
Okay.
and or that you have to be in person first. I think we had two things on there. All right,
Something like that.
thank you so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
All
Thanks
right.
a lot.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Have a
See
good
you
one.
all later.
See you
safe.
next month.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Aye.